What do you hate most about silver? What's the one thing that all silver investors constantly complain about? But what if that factor could actually work in our favor as we head into the coming months, quarters, and years? We're going to talk about just that in this video. Let's call it the X factor. I heard it from Rick Rule. He did an interview with a channel called Resource Talks, and I've never heard anyone bring up this point. I've been following silver for decades. How long have you been investing in silver and the silver mining stocks? But Rick brought up a point that blew me away, and quite honestly, filled me with even more optimism when it comes to the future price moves that we could see in both physical silver and the precious metal mining stocks. We're going to talk about this X factor, but first, Rick had a number of other interesting things to say that relate directly to the silver market. He said that the prices of the mining stocks in particular, and also the metal, could go up significantly before anybody even cares, before we see anything about silver on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, or before your neighbors are talking to you about silver. We could already see silver prices maybe go up double before anyone starts to pay attention. And we've talked about that ad nauseum on this channel. We are such a sliver of the population, such a small number of people that know the great attributes, the wealth preservation attributes of silver, that if just a few more people do join us, it would be a huge percentage gain in the amount of money in the sector. Rick said it himself. He said the easy money is made in silver when it goes from being hated, like it is just now, not all the way to being loved, but if it just goes from being hated to unhated, we could see a double or triple in a lot of the silver mining stocks. You know silver is a small market. 1 billion ounces produced per year, a 20 billion market per year in terms of annual production. It's very volatile. It can go up and it can go down with wild price swings. We've all experienced that together. And silver always moves after gold. And what have we seen recently in the gold price? A rather exaggerated move from $1,800 up to close to $2,000 right now. But silver hasn't really had a big spike up in price. Silver always moves a little later and, as a bonus kicker, on a more exaggerated scale. So we could be moving into a period, especially if we get gold moving to new all-time highs like many people are predicting before the end of 2023 or sometime in 2024, silver will have a lot of catching up to do, and it'll do it with a turbo boost. If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement. You want to hear about extraordinary? Well, a lot of the silver mining stocks in the 1970s went from pennies per share all the way up to $20, $30, some even $40 per share. The silver mining stocks can have even more exaggerated moves. We're going to get to that X factor in just a little bit, and I'm going to show you why that alone could help contribute to unbelievable price increases in silver and the mining stocks. But let's also recognize that the silver market is tricky. It's very delicate, very sensitive, right? It can move on the retail side, we know, from being shortage to surplus, back to shortage in a very, very quick time frame. Only 18-19% of silver that's produced every year actually comes from primary silver mines. Most of it is a byproduct of lead, zinc, and copper mining. Recycling, well, that's often dependent upon the spot price of silver. I've heard Keith Neumeyer say that it's really not cost effective to recycle silver until the price gets up near $50 per ounce. And on the demand side, it can fluctuate wildly from an investor perspective. However, we know from an industrial perspective, electrical, medical, and of course solar, that we're seeing an increased demand profile for silver. We're going to get to the X factor next, but we have to recognize determining the price of silver based upon supply and demand dynamics alone is very difficult. The supply side, because only a small portion of it comes from primary silver miners, and the demand side, because it can fluctuate wildly, especially from an investment perspective, it makes the supply-demand dynamics in silver not real clear. So the price of silver can be manipulated. And that brings us to our X factor. A lot of people like to claim silver has been manipulated. That's the number one complaint that I talked about with you at the beginning of this video. Is the price of silver manipulated? There's a cottage industry surrounding proving that silver has been suppressed, manipulated, tamped down. We all have a slightly different take on the subject, but generally speaking, most silver investors believe that silver has been held down in price over the decades. More so on the short-term side, and Rick Rule talked about that. Is it manipulated on the short term? Sure it is. Just look at the leverage in the futures markets. There's like 200 contracts written for each 1 ounce of silver that's deliverable in the exchange warehouses. And if you extrapolate that out to a monthly basis, the numbers are just absolutely astounding. All markets are generally susceptible to manipulation on the short term. On the long term, that's a subject for more debate. But here's the X factor. Here's where it gets really interesting. Rick pointed out that over the last 50 years, because of the strong U.S. dollar, because of the macro factors which kind of came together, confluence of factors that were pushing down upon precious metals prices, dollar hegemony, those types of things, it was easier for the manipulators to manipulate the price of silver downward. They don't really care which direction they're going to manipulate the price of silver. And as we move into, let's say, the next 50 years, 5 years, and possibly even 5 months, it may become much easier for the manipulators to manipulate the price of silver to the upside. First Mining Gold is a development company advancing 2 of the largest gold projects in Canada. Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet, located in Quebec, each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has 0 debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects. Look, they don't care which direction it goes. All they care about is which direction it's easier to manipulate the price. So we could come into a season where we see upward price support for silver because of these very people that we were so angry with over the last 50 years. Yeah, the JP Morgan traders who got convicted, all that good stuff. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's time they start manipulating the price to the positive. And that could mean big gains for the price of silver, and in particular for the silver mining stocks. That's the big X factor, this manipulation that we've all yelled about and maybe even cried about over the last 30, 40 years could turn in our favor as they decide that it's easier now to push the price of silver up, especially when we consider the crazy demand profile for silver, the shortage of silver, the deficit in silver that the Silver Institute tells us about. It could make for a very interesting coming 5 months, 5 years, heck, maybe even 50 years. You know I'll be here for you through it all. We'll ride these bumps together. I appreciate you joining me here in the basement. When you get to be a basement dweller with me, we'll cover the precious metals markets and we'll ride out these bumps together. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.